on the seismic global events that are now taking place on our planet. George Humphrey, economist, businessman, former Austin City Council member, good friend of mine now for, well, I met him more than 16 years ago, joins us. And, of course, he's also an author. And George is the first person I heard, not talk about the private Federal Reserve and the New World Order, but to talk about derivatives and how it was a plan to bankrupt all the major pension funds and government systems of the planet, and how out of that crisis, after they bankrupted the North American Union, the European Union, the Asian Union, they would then bring in this global bank of the world. And I know in his book, Common Sense, and then several others, he broke all this down back in the mid and late 1980s. So I wanted to have him here today to discuss the latest developments, because it's all unfolding as just exactly as you said it would, George.
First of all, it's great to be here, and your new studio is fabulous. And thank you for that introduction. You know, as we look back on what I said and what you said and a few others said 12, 15 years ago, we weren't absolutely perfectly right, but the things that we had to say were pretty on base.
Well, George, I learned about derivatives from you.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't know what that term was.
And I'm still I have a degree in economics. I talk about this every single day with some really smart people around the world, and I still don't know everything about them. I'm still learning about them because they're such complex instruments. But it doesn't take a PhD in economics to figure out when they took down the Glass-Steagall Act, which was put in after the Great Depression to stop the runaway betting on finances that were going on. The Glass-Steagall Act was the brakes between the financial houses and the banks in this country, and it worked very, very well for 60-some-odd years. And then the absolute monsters, the Goldman Sachs, the J.P. Morgans, and the other large financial houses come in, deregulate, and it didn't take much to figure out that when you start having these non-regulated derivatives in which the financial houses are able to leverage their, quote, investments at 5 to 1, 10 to 1, 20 to 1, 50 to 1, at 100 to 1. And as the market, especially the high-tech market, was going up and up and up, and this was all off the records, untold amounts of, not billions or hundreds of billions, but tens of trillions of dollars were being funneled into the hands of a very, very few number of people.
And they used that to consolidate power and then to get everybody basically indebted to them. And specifically, George, I mean, you really did specifically on your TV shows, radio shows, and in your books and audio cassettes. I mean, I remember listening to them. You broke down the derivative time bomb. You talked about how it was infecting all the other investments, how they would engage in too big to fail and hold everybody hostage, and then announce a new Ponzi scheme on top of that. And now, in Europe, they're calling it a private financial union. They're saying all sovereignty left in those countries will be transferred to this private group. Soros says Eurozone crisis could be even worse than Lehman. He said that was a great crisis for him. UBS head, that's the biggest bank in Switzerland, Euro collapse could lead to martial law civil war if you don't give the banks this new power.
Right.
And then listening to Bloomberg Radio the other night, they had 5 experts on in a row, all reading the same script, almost word for word, that this is reasonable, it's good, you know, the mega banks are taking over. I saw 6 months ago with the big Ireland crisis, as soon as they sign on the euro, suddenly they implode, and their head central banker said, a quote, he said, "It's good to have foreign banks run us." So they're hiding in view incredible economic conquest through fraud, and most of the money isn't even owed by the governments of the people.
Fraud is an understatement. This is the most massive transfer of funds in the history of mankind. away from the working middle classes of not only the United States, but all of all the Western countries. I just got back from 6 weeks traveling through Western Europe, through the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland, Austria, and France, and in Iceland. And you have two different situations. There is no question in my mind that the European Union financially is in as bad or worse shape than the United States. And the United States is so far gone. I mean, it's not even a game.
But it is
anymore.
By design, from your research.
It's absolutely by design.
What's the end game then?
Well, the end game, as you and I both know, is power. With this handful, what we call the power elite, it's not about money, because there is no such thing as money. They have all the credit. They have all what we call the money in the world. But this money is only the strings of the puppeteer to get full control of the world.
It's just fake monopoly garbage. Chips they issue to us in their rigged casino. We'll sell it our mothers, our daughters, our fathers, our sons, kill grandma for a stick of bubble gum, and it's all just a fake symbol of energy that we accept from the money changers. So where is this going now that you predicted this 14 years ago with incredible precision, on paper, publicly? What's coming in the next phase if their plan succeeds versus the resistance and awakening that clearly is mounting?
Well, their plan has already succeeded. However, the plan is faulty because what we call the truth movement, the resistance, people who believe in the rule of law, people who listen to the Alex Jones show, people who care.
They've taken over through fraud, so we wake up from the illusion, it's over.
Yeah, this chapter of the game is already over.
They won.
It's over. The European Union is going down. Germany by itself, even though it is doing well, cannot support Greece. Italy.
And it's designed to pull them down in the end.
Absolutely.
It's always invest more so it doesn't sink, and then they say invest more so it doesn't sink, invest more so it doesn't sink. That's the trap, how they, basically salami slice the whole situation.
Now, there's some good news in this. First of all, not all the countries are playing the game. And I got to spend a day in Iceland, and there are 326,000 people in Iceland. It was very, very well educated. The people are great, but they deregulated the banks, and they created, I think, $28 billion worth of debt, and then tried to pile it on the people.
And the people revolted for a year.
And the people revolted and said, hell no, kicked out all the politicians and said, this is not our debt. And then Iceland was in the news big time, and then suddenly nothing's there.
Because they began to win. And then what did we discover? It was true. 90+% of the debt was not theirs.
Yes.
It was the private banks that had bought off their ministers.
4 private banks. And some of these banks were little bitty offices controlled by 15, 20 people. And I was talking to a lot of people in Iceland, and when they first started doing it, they'd walk into a room and there'd be 35 high-priced lawyers, not just from Iceland, but from Germany, from England, from New York, that were all trying to stare them down. But they still have little Viking blood in them.
They called the bluff.
They called the bluff, and they said, not no, but heck no. And so you know what? We can do the same thing. These derivatives are not our debt. They're being sloughed off.
But that's my point.
Yes.
Ireland is a success story. They're doing great. Everybody's moving there. And as soon as they sign the EU Lisbon Treaty, as soon as they signed on, they had to bring it forward twice.
Right.
Overnight, they said, you're now bankrupt. You've signed on to the euro's debt.
Yes.
And then their bankers, their private Federal Reserve head came out and said, well, this is wonderful that we're signing on to this debt and ruled by foreign banks now. They actually say it, trying to say it in plain view, like, well, you're a guy in a suit. We'll be your slave. Same thing with Greece. So if it's anything, it is the chutzpah, the hubris. I mean, it's just incredible.
And it's all by design. I mean, anybody who has any sort of objective, investigative knowledge could see that not just 6 months ago or a year, but 2 or 3 years ago, this train was going off the tracks, especially with Greece, and then with Portugal, and then with Ireland.
But their scam is, knowing it's an impossible to pay back black hole that's fraudulent, give us more power, give us more power,
Absolutely.
Things get worse. Okay, we'll fix it, give us more power, then it gets worse, give us more power,
Yes,
give us more power. How long can that work?
Well, it can work as long as the people are still in the matrix and as long as they're still mind controlled. Because the economy, what we have right now, is a total Ponzi scheme. This thing that we call money is just paper and ink. It has no value. This whole thing called sovereign debt, it's all an imagination. It's like the man, it's like the wizard in The Wizard of Oz. He controls the whole town through images and smoke and mirrors. And it clearly, as we've talked before, real money has value, gold and silver, because it stores
Private
value. Private property, hard assets.
But notice now, a piece of land, you pay a property tax. It's really a feudal rent. You don't really own it. Gold and silver are one of the few things you can still physically hold. Then there's physical power. There's the Second Amendment. All of these real things that a freehold, free man or woman has are under assault by the globalist, and it's a simple corporate takeover model. Anything that stands alone, anything that's independent, is an enemy of this globalist board. The family, national sovereignty, ideas, health. This is literally a global spirit of destruction.
Look, we're at the end game. I mean, you and I have been talking about this stuff for a long, long time. And the stuff that we talked about 15 years ago, it's like, it's so mild. And not only every year, every month, we become aware of more and more and more and more and more and more. The game is all over as we know it.